Ladies and gentlemen, meet the Easter Bunny. You really want to? Yes, I do. Okay. What do you want to sing for us? Well, if I told you what it was, you'd probably say it was How Are You? Oh, fine. Thank you. What was that? It's controversial, and you wouldn't let me do it. If I had a ship, I'd sail away. Music, I'm in the mood for love simply because you're near me. A tape was sent to CBS's censors. Within minutes, alarm bells were ringing throughout the hallways. Instead of the usual comedy routine, the screen was filled with sharp, bold political message far beyond the limits the network had ever allowed. All right, you guys. I hired you as decorators. I want Billy the Kid to feel right at home. All right, first of all, I juggle one now too. Ho ho ho. Next. Who's next? Applause. 6 days later, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour was abruptly cancelled without explanation, without a press conference, without a farewell. The tape never aired, but its aftershocks rippled to the television industry, sparking a fierce confrontation between artists and censors. From that moment on, the concept of free speech on American television was forever changed. What was going on behind the scenes? Who decided to pull the plug? And what was on a tape that sent CBS into a panic? Let's take a look back at the shocking incident that rewrote the rules of American laughter television. In the 1960s, American television was controlled by three major networks: NBC, ABC, and CBS. Every night, millions of families sat down to watch carefully edited programs that conformed to moral, political, and cultural standards of the post-war era. In that context, CBS dominated the market with safe shows like The Ed Sullivan Show and Bonanza. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, live from New York, The Ed Sullivan Music Show. But as the anti-war movement spread and a counterculture grew among young people, CBS was forced to find a new way to keep its audience. The idea for the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour came not as a bold breakthrough, but as a need to compete with NBC, especially in the Sunday prime time slot, where Bonanza dominated ratings. Tom and Dick Smothers, two brothers with a light-hearted, smart brother, dumb brother comedy style, have been popular on smaller shows and were considered a safe enough choice. CBS hoped they could reinvent the variety show format without causing content problems. Nothing funny in this. Hey boys, we're through censoring your show. The show premiered on February 5, 1967. The first episode went smoothly, sticking to the same format with musical numbers, light-hearted banter between the brothers, and some simple comedy. But behind the scenes, Tom Smothers had other plans. He didn't want to just be a distraction. Under the guise of humor, Tom began to introduce social ideas into the show. The seemingly harmless lines gradually became sharper, more multi-layered. While CBS focused on ratings, Tom took the opportunity to build a new playground, one where television did not avoid reality, but faced it and questioned it. Dick Smothers did not object, but was cautious. He played the role of balancer, the host who softened Tom's edgy statements. The change came gradually, slowly enough for CBS to not intervene early, but quickly enough for viewers to notice. The first notable guest was Pete Seeger, an icon of the anti-war movement. Then came artists like Harry Belafonte, Joan Baez, Jefferson Airplane, and The Who. The musical acts weren't just entertainment. They were statements. Songs about war injustice and freedom aired in prime time on national television. In addition, the show began to hire younger, more politically minded writers, including Steve Martin and Mason Williams. The script gradually shifted from situation comedy to satire. Humorous folk songs were now interrupted by fictional debates about military policy, the church, or civil liberties. The show retains familiar structure, music, conversation, comedy, but the content inside changed completely. Viewership of the show grew steadily throughout its first season, especially strong among the 18 to 25 age group. College campuses began to see it as a voice of representation on television. Students began to share lines in the show as a trend. Meanwhile, many parents and local stations in the South began to send letters complaining about the content. CBS saw the split in his audience, but continued to air it because the ratings were still higher than expected. Inside CBS, executives began to feel a loss of control. Tom refused to change lines if he felt it was necessary to keep the message intact. Many episodes were re-edited just before airtime or sent out behind schedule. Still, the show continued to air each week, adding a new challenge to CBS. The second season began with high expectations from both viewers and creators. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour was no longer just a comedy show. It was a rare television platform for topics that were being avoided elsewhere. With viewership steadily growing, especially among younger viewers, CBS was willing to take risks as long as the show didn't push the envelope. The lyrics were about rejecting empty promises from the state and called on young people to stop, following procession, and redraw the map. The scene ended with Steinberg throwing a shawl into the audience and shouting, "Peace, not war. Preach it." The tape was sent to CBS as usual, but unlike previous episodes, this one was blocked. Shortly thereafter, CBS claimed that the episode had missed its deadline for review and was in violation of a production agreement. Tom Smothers immediately countered, claiming that the tape had been sent to the Hollywood censors on time. The problem, he said, lay with the New York headquarters where the review process had been unusually lengthy. In internal meetings, CBS executives headed by William Paley demanded that Steinberg's performance be completely removed if the episode was to be aired. Tom refused. On April 4, 1969, CBS terminated its contract with the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. There was no formal press conference. No advanced notice to viewers. The following week, the show's time slot was replaced by Hi Haw, a less controversial rural comedy show. The episode never aired in the United States, but a copy was aired by CTV in Canada, which was not subject to CBS or censorship. The banned content quickly became known through bootleg recordings and VHS tapes circulating unofficially among college students. College newspapers and youth culture magazines ran articles analyzing the episode's content. One described it as a bitter but worthy farewell for a show that dared to say what others avoided. Public reaction was sharply divided. On the pro side, younger viewers saw it as evidence that CBS had sacrificed freedom of expression for political safety. Small protests broke out in several cities, particularly around local CBS headquarters. Meanwhile, many conservative groups praised the decision to end the show, calling a necessary move to protect public morality. The event was not only the direct cause of the show's cancellation, but also became a symbol of the final frontier that American television at the time could not overcome. There was no financial crisis, no personal scandal, just a 5-minute anti-war scene with a controversial character. It was enough to end a nationally rated show. The fall in legacy for Tom and Dick Smothers. The cut was a blow to their careers and reputations. They were not invited back to television for years. Nationally broadcast offers disappeared almost immediately. Tom became a difficult person to hire. Considered too risky for the network, Dick, though more cautious, was also associated with the image of the other half of a controversial show. Every door that had been opened to them in the television industry was immediately closed. Behind the scenes, though, a quiet legal battle began. The Smothers Brothers sued CBS for breach of contract, claiming that the cancellation of the show based on late episodes was just an excuse. The lawsuit dragged on for nearly 4 years. In 1973, a court ruled in their favor, ordering CBS to pay more than $770,000 for violating the co-production clause. But with their legal victory, they never regained the status they once had on television. During that time, the relationship between Tom and Dick was also tested. Dick later said in an interview that he did not fully agree with Tom's stubbornness. He believed that if Tom had made some concessions, the show could have lasted longer and had a greater impact. But the two remained close on stage. Although they were no longer on television, they continued to perform live in small theaters, maintaining a loyal following. CBS's decision to pull the show had a ripple effect across the media industry. Many young producers, including Lorne Michaels, who would later create Saturday Night Live, saw it as a lesson in the limits of creative freedom when confronting the power structure of television. Michaels once said that without the Smothers Brothers, there would be no SNL. The show's sure existence was the first precedent for mixed media and political television. The show's influence extended beyond the industry. Young artists, especially in comedy, began to refer to show as a symbol of suppression. Censored tapes became collectibles passed around by students and independent artists. Some sketches that CBS had previously rejected were later discovered in writer-private archives, adding to the symbolism of censorship. In terms of reputation, the perception the show and the brothers has changed over time. In 2008, Tom Smothers received an honorary Emmy Award nearly 40 years after it was taken off the air. In his speech, he said simply, "Peace is harder than war." a quote that has since been widely quoted in the media. In 2010, both were inducted into the Television Academy Hall of Fame, marking a belated but significant restoration of honor outside of the entertainment industry. Their story is also seen as part of the history of free expression in America. Tom and Dick were included on the Nixon administration's enemies list in the early 1970s. Although they did not suffer the same direct consequences as some politicians, their appearance on the list was seen as clear evidence that the show had truly embarrassed the administration, something few television shows had done before. By 2022, the entire archive of the show, including scripts, tapes, and unaired sketches, will be transferred to UC Santa Barbara. Dick later said in an interview that he did not fully agree with Tom's stubbornness. He believed that if Tom had made some concessions, the show could have lasted longer and had a greater impact. But the two remained close on stage. Although they were no longer on television, they continued to perform live in small theaters, maintaining a loyal following. CBS's decision to pull the show had a ripple effect across the media industry. Many young producers, including Lorne Michaels, who would later create Saturday Night Live, saw it as a lesson in the limits of creative freedom when confronting the power structure of television. Michaels once said that without the Smothers brothers, there would be no SNL. The show's sure existence was the first precedent for mixed media and political television. The show's influence extended beyond the industry. Young artists, especially in comedy, began to refer to show as a symbol of suppression. Censored tapes became collectibles passed around by students and independent artists. Some sketches that CBS had previously rejected were later discovered in writer-private archives, adding to the symbolism of censorship. In terms of reputation, the perception the show and the brothers has changed over time. In 2008, Tom Smothers received an honorary Emmy Award nearly 40 years after it was taken off the air. In his speech, he said simply, "Peace is harder than war," a quote that has since been widely quoted in the media. In 2010, both were inducted into the Television Academy Hall of Fame, marking a belated but significant restoration of honor outside of the entertainment industry. Their story is also seen as part of the history of free expression in America. Tom and Dick were included on the Nixon administration's enemies list in the early 1970s. Although they did not suffer the same direct consequences as some politicians, their appearance on the list was seen as clear evidence that the show had truly embarrassed the administration, something few television shows had done before. By 2022, the entire archive of the show, including scripts, tapes, and unaired sketches, will be transferred to UC Santa Barbara. This marks the first time many of the show's internal documents have been made available to researchers, including some sketches that CBS had ordered destroyed. The digitization of the archives will help reshape the show's legacy, especially for a younger generation who never saw the heyday of protest television. When Tom Smothers died in late 2023, social media was flooded with show clips, old stage photos, and tributes from famous comedians. Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, Sarah Silverman all mentioned him as one of the pioneers of modern political comedy. They spoke of him not as a legend in the past, but as part of the roots that made American television more daring, more outspoken. But now, unexpectedly, the show is starting to re-enter popular memory through an unlikely source, the internet. VHS tapes that were once passed around among college students are now digitized and spreading rapidly on YouTube, Reddit, TikTok, and other video sharing platforms. Echoes of a silent song. The line, "Mom always liked you best," has become the soundtrack to countless memes and parodies. A clip of Patson's fictional 1968 campaign in which he promised to solve all problems by waiting for him to go away has been shared millions of times. In the current political climate, sketches once considered too sensitive are now considered classics of thoughtful satire. The rediscovery is not just nostalgia, but a belated recognition of a show that was ahead of its time. The UC Santa Barbara archives continue to be mined by researchers, students, and documentarians. Unnerd footage, Tom Smothers' handwritten notes, cut sketches, and CBS response letters all add up to a fuller picture of the scale and intensity of the intervention the program endured. In small exhibitions, viewers get to see not only the finished product, but also the struggles that went into every minute of airtime. The response from modern comedy has been clear. Contemporary hosts like John Oliver, Trevor Noah, Hassan Minhaj have all acknowledged the influence of the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour on the way they produce their content. Not because of the format, but because of the way it demonstrated that comedy was not an escape from reality, but a tool for reaction and dialogue. In media conferences, The show is cited as part of the process of forming modern critical television. Though no longer on the air, the show's resonance lives on through its quotes, its symbols, and its indomitable spirit. When excerpts from the Forbidden Sermon were reared at a memorial event at the New York Television Festival, young audiences got their first look at the entire episode, which had been banned from the air in 1969. Contrary to expectations of its obsolescence, the content remained sharp, even surprising, with a level of directness that few shows dare display today. Looking back, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour doesn't call itself iconic. It was made iconic by the reactions it generated from audiences, from networks, from governments, and ultimately from popular culture. A show that was nixed for speaking out has become one of the clearest examples of how television can be bold, dissenting, and uncompromising. If you feel that what happened to the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour is not just a thing of the past, but something that still resonates today, leave a comment. What would you think if such a show aired today? Don't forget to like and share this video with anyone who loves television, freedom of expression, and wants to understand why a comedy act once caused a national debate. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe now. There are so many untold stories, banned episodes, and cancelled stages waiting to be told again, just like the Smothers Brothers, not silenced.